What was the first video game you played? The first one I remember clearly was Operation Neptune 1, the computer at the rec center I hung out at. Which is how I found out I like math. At home I had a disc with some Apogee/Epic shareware games on it, and I probably played Duke Nukem the most. I'm not entirely sure. My first games console was a Super Nintendo that my parents had before I was born. And the games I remember playing the most on that system were Super Mario World, Super Mario All-Stars, and Donkey Kong Country 2, along with a variety of sports games. So it was probably one of those. Probably Mario Brothers or Balloon Fight on NES, but I had older brothers, so I was relegated to being the audience most of the time. Not that I minded. But the first game I remember actually playing myself and getting through is Super Mario World on SNES. First one I remember is probably Duck Hunt. I remember opening my Nintendo 64 when I was a wee lad on Christmas morning though. Nintendo NES was my first one though. Don't remember how it came to be. But I do remember playing an NFL football game with my dad. Tecmo Bowl. Good days. For PC it was the Journeyman Project 2, Buried in Time. Way back in the Windows 95 days. A really interesting game I recommend anyone who likes adventure games try. Thinking back though, my first ever experience with video games was a Super Nintendo my grandparents bought for me when I visited them in Nalchik, Russia. It came with an all-in-one game cartridge. That's how you got games back in the day in most non-Western countries. I do not specifically remember my first game I played off that cartridge, as I was around 5 years young though. Ladies, what is the strangest thing you've heard/seen in public? A druggie walking down the street, clearly all pepped up on meth. She looked to be about 80 with really old purple hair. She kind of looked like she was in a dogfight, but she won somehow. She had a winter coat on, mind you it was 80 degrees Fahrenheit, felt like 105 degrees Fahrenheit, some booty shorts that kind of looked like assless chaps, high heels, and both of her boobs literally just sticking out. She just had tank top and both of her saggy Grammy meth titties were out. I just wanted to let the fresh air into my house because I was cleaning. Someone threw a rock at her though, so I did kind of feel sorry for her in the end. It was King's Day and I traditionally always go to the flea market in my town on King's Day, and then I saw a 10-year-old boy dressed in orange throwing a temper tantrum and angrily crying at his mom because they were selling stuff and his parents wanted to go home but he wanted to stay longer to sell stuff, and then he ran to his dad's car and grabbed the ladder that was in the car and started hitting his dad with it. His dad screamed that he needed to behave and his mom screamed that he needed to get hit by a car, and then he ran away crying and hit his balloon animal on the ground and it popped. Then he started screaming because his balloon animal popped. Dysfunctional family here. I was on a girls' holiday in Spain and we had 30-minute alarms set for turning over whilst tanning. On one alarm, I had been laying on my front and I sat up to turn and lay on my back. But I noticed a woman standing on the beach with her bikini bottoms off, and she holding her cheeks open. I nudged my friend to look, and we both sat in horror as we watched her take a shit on the sand, whilst standing, in full view of everyone. When was done, she kicked sand over it and put her bikini bottoms back on and walked off. To say the least, I was very glad that beach had boardwalks to the street so we didn't need to walk across the sand when we decided to leave. They have dreams so detailed and intricate that you can't even believe how you even thought of that information. It's like you really are in a time warp like Inception, and time is slowed down so that your brain can add more detail to each frame and quote. I like to rap and I used to have dreams where I was freestyling and it was always so easy with good quality rhymes, which I can only very rarely do when awake. I just couldn't understand how I was so much better when dreaming. One of two things: the subconscious has freer control when asleep, which is what carries your entire being forth and creates all your moods, so it understandably has a lot of depth to it and is not a cognitively driven thing, it is a resonance of you. You are perceiving time more slowly. What feels like 1 second in your dream is actually many seconds. I have intense vivid dreams and sometimes I write them down with drawings and diagrams. Sometimes there are musical aspects to them in a code or just nonsense songs or earworms but with a random method of play. Sometimes I can smell within the dream. Good smells and bad smells. The worst are when I go on shopping sprees and buy the most amazing house or things and then I'll wake up and look for them and go crazy until I remember it must have been a dream. Another bad dream set will be my teeth crumbling and being ground into powder and or falling out of my mouth. I have dreams like this so often. Always so out of place or random compared to whatever is going on in life. What's funny is I have dreamt like this since childhood, and as a kid I always would wake up and tell my little sister about them. As an adult, I immediately text her the dreams I've had once I wake up in the morning from having one. One day we were hanging out and she shows me this note on her phone and I notice a folder in her notes titled So-and-so's Dreams and quote. This girl had been screenshotting my dream texts and saving them for years. Really cool thing to experience as siblings. How often do you argue with your partner because they think you have to agree with their point of view in order to understand them? I don't. As I aged, I moved from arguing to becoming more and more like Socrates, not just in looks. I simply ask them deeper and deeper questions and dismantle their argument, until they either understand their own illogic or get mad and walk away. A mature relationship where two people truly care for one another's feelings already understand one another. It takes time. Like years. My wife and I have arguments every once in a while, but it's usually circumstantial and based on life's trials thrown at us at random. I don't. I have ditched partners for being so damn childish and ridiculous. It's okay to agree to disagree on some things. The small things that don't really matter. As long as you agree on the big important things. Something that I have struggled with most of my life is the idea that if I sufficiently explain my position, then the other person will come to my way of thinking. Because of course my conclusion is the one that makes sense. And I am always baffled when they still don't agree with me. We rarely argue in this normal understanding of the term. I am a very analytical person. If I think my point of view can be proven, I go to sources that we can both respect and agree. If I think we should agree to disagree, I would just stop arguing, as it brings nothing but a crack in a relationship. Not quite argue. But in my last relationship we debated most things, and it was one of the fulfilling parts of our relationship. I think it's important to discuss points of views and see what your partner's logical process is. And I do think it helps you understand them better. But I've also been with partners that can't logically defend their thoughts past "that's how I feel" and get way too defensive over an opinion. People with that personality trait, I began to understand that I didn't like to spend time with them.